The Bishop Paiute tribe, located near the eastern Sierra Nevada mountains in central California, has observed many changes to its water supply. Snowpack in springs are diminishing. Streams are drying earlier than they used to, and stream temperatures are warming. Worsening drought conditions are intensifying water security challenges. This is a climate change issue. The Bishop Paiute tribe's water supply has suffered since the early 1900s when Los Angeles began pumping and diverting water from Owens Valley. The impacts resulting from these drought and water loss issues are widespread. Native and invasive fish populations are changing. Bacteria and algae levels are negatively impacting waterways. Drought and beetle infestation are killing trees and threatening culturally important foods, such as pine nuts and acorns, while also increasing wildfire danger. Wildfire risk is further exacerbated by the drying of grasses that grow rapidly following sporadic heavy rains in winter and spring. The Bishop Paiute tribe has documented high and unhealthy levels of PM10 air pollution due to wildfire smoke. Other tribes across the country are already managing crises associated with drought and acute water shortages. According to the Climate Science Special Report, recent drought and water deficits have reached record intensities in parts of the Southwest and Great Plains, depleting soil moisture and increasing wildfire and flooding risks. Scientists classify drought or water deficits in three ways. Meteorological deficits are due to a lack of precipitation. Agricultural deficits are a lack of soil moisture. And hydrological deficits are a lack of water flow and runoff. The data on drought conditions across the contiguous 48 states is misleading. Some regions are drying while others are getting wetter. It is helpful to look at drought by region. Drought.gov maps drought risk and severity across the U.S. It is easy to see that tribes in the western U.S. are at high risk of persistent drought. Another way to look at drought by location is to consider projections for soil moisture changes through the end of the century. Tribes experiencing drought and water deficits can expect a range of impacts to health and well-being. Researchers are finding that drought affects mental health in a variety of ways, including anxiety, grief, and helplessness. Emotional distress may result from reduced access or even displacement due to lack of water availability, damage to the local environment, or economic change or insecurity. For example, tribes that rely on food or income from their fishing or agricultural operations may worry about the future well-being of their members and residents. The Mapping Resilience Report states, in northwestern California, drought has decimated the salmon stock, an important food, economic, and ceremonial resource for the Yurok, Hoopa Valley, and Karuk tribes on the Klamath and Trinity rivers. A map by NOAA shows that drought can induce significant costs in damaged or failed crop production and increased costs for livestock feed. Tribes' well-being is affected when cultural traditions and practices that depend on waterways are disrupted, or as culturally important plants and animals decline or migrate. Drought also triggers secondary exposures that impact health, including worsened air quality, disease vector changes, and water and food insecurity. Drought conditions tend to reduce air quality and exacerbate respiratory illness through mechanisms associated with soil drying, loss of vegetation, airborne particulate matter, and the creation of conditions conducive for dust storms and wildfires. These are the perfect conditions for dangerous fungal diseases like valley fever. In the United States, dust exposure has been linked to increased incidence of respiratory diseases, including asthma, acute bronchitis, and pneumonia. Cases of valley fever in the U.S. have risen about 15% each year from 1998 to 2011. Cases of valley fever in Los Angeles County in California have increased steadily since 2009, with a 37% increase between 2015 and 2016. In addition, air pollutants such as soluble trace gases and particles remain suspended in the air when there is a lack of precipitation. Human exposure risk to vector-borne diseases like West Nile virus can increase during drought conditions. This is due to a higher prevalence of the virus in mosquito and bird populations as a result of closer contact between birds, the virus hosts, and mosquitoes, the vectors, as they congregate around dwindling water sources. Drought can also increase pest infestations and disease vectors affecting forest health. These include increases in bark beetles, fungus, and shot hole borers. In the Southwest, droughts followed by periods of heavy rainfall have been associated with an increase in rodent populations. This could lead to increased exposures to rodent allergens and rodent-borne diseases such as hantavirus. The contamination and depletion of water sources is detrimental to human health. Drought can decrease water quantity and quality as low flow or stagnant conditions increase concentrations of pollutants or contaminants. These contaminants include chemicals and heavy metals. Higher temperatures and shallower water encourage pathogen growth. Heavy rain following drought can flush accumulated pathogens or contaminants into larger water bodies. Reduced surface and groundwater quality increases the risk of waterborne illness. Reduced surface and groundwater quality also increases the risk of foodborne illnesses when pathogens or contaminants enter the food chain. Tribal populations most vulnerable to drought include children, elders, communities that rely on groundwater, agricultural workers, people with health issues impacted by poor air quality, people with mental, behavioral, and cognitive disorders. Disruptions in food production due to extreme events like drought can increase costs and limit access. This is particularly damaging to food-insecure households, which includes nearly 16% of households with children in the United States. Tribes across the United States are considering strategies to prepare for drought. These strategies include developing drought contingency plans, restricting development in high-risk areas to reduce water burdens, promoting water conservation or efficiency programs, replacing irrigation systems and installing water recycling and conservation measures, building infrastructure needed for aquifer water storage and recovery, diversifying water supply options, and increasing water storage capacities. Drought and water insecurities can be damaging to tribes and tribal health, but there are many excellent options to protect tribal communities facing this uncertain future. Climate change impacts are real and dangerous, but can be alleviated with well-thought-out strategies. Additional videos in this series discuss other climate change exposures and strategies.